Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Faulds, and I'm an adapted physical education specialist for Fremont Unified School District. I'm very excited to present this information, and hopefully you'll be able to take something away from this presentation to better support your students in the least restrictive environment of learning. So let's go ahead and get this show on the road. The title of this presentation is Coach Nick's Bag of Tricks. Our purpose for today is to identify ways to accommodate students with disabilities accessing the general physical education curriculum in the least restrictive environment of learning. Our objectives for today are to identify inexpensive materials to use during physical education, list different games and activities you can use the presented equipment for, and to demonstrate fiscal responsibility to our administration and colleagues following the conclusion of this presentation. Under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, physical education is a direct service that can be applied to children ages 3 through 21, and this service can be provided at school, at home, in hospitals, or at institutions. Physical education is defined as the development of physical and motor fitness, fundamental movement skills and patterns, and skills in dance, aquatics, individual and group games, and sports, which includes lifetime and intramural. And physical education is also referred to as motor development, movement education, special physical education, and adaptive physical education. The least restrictive environment of learning is the environment where the student is able to successfully access the curriculum to reach their full educational potential with the least amount of constraints. And this can take place in general physical education with general education peers, a pull-out physical education setting where you can take the students to a separate gym or multi-purpose room, whatever you may use, or a combination of the two where you spend part of the time in inclusive physical education with general education peers and the other part in a separate location. This can also take place in one-on-one settings or in small group settings. So here are some pictures of a couple different items that you can use to support students with disabilities. There is a stationary rock wall, a push-up counter, a beat baseball base, a little item that students who use wheelchairs can utilize for striking. And these are all great pieces of equipment to utilize in physical education, but there's something that they all have in common. And I'm sure you can guess what that is. For those of you who don't know, all of these pieces of equipment are expensive. And in our job, we may not always have the best budget that students may really need to utilize to become successful, but we got to work with what we got so students can reach their full potential, even if we don't have that good of a budget. And that's what we're going to really talk about today. So here's the list of items that we're going to be going over today and the different activities or skills that you can use them for. It'll include string, tape, tights, balloons, socks, toilet paper rolls, paper clips, wire coat hangers, rubber bands, and plastic bags. Our first item, the lovely string. I use string for a lot of different things when I'm supporting students in my different classes. And this can be applied in these different activities and skills, and we're just going to pull up a few videos of some examples. So here's an example of how you can utilize string when working on running. So by taking a piece of string and tying it to two anchor points, if you have a student who is visually impaired, this can serve as a guide wire to where the student can follow the string, and then that way it's a predictable environment and they're able to independently run. And this can be applied in relay activities, pacer testing, or various warm-up activities that we utilize in physical education. And sliding, again, if you take a long piece of string and connect it to 2 anchor points, the student can stand up and use that string as a visual and touch cue to follow along and practice the slide without having their bodies turned. And when striking with implements, you can use a piece of string and tie one end to the ball that you're using for floor hockey or anything or something along those lines, and tie the other end to the hockey stick. That way the student is provided multiple trials to practice the skill, and the item still stays in close proximity. When using string for throwing, if you use something like a wiffle ball or tennis ball and have a long piece of string and tie it to the ball, the student is able to throw it, and then you can quickly reel it back in and provide to the student again for multiple trials. We're going to show a video on catching in just a little bit, and string can also be used for suspended targets, which I will show a video of right now. Whoops. Never mind. But if you're working on an activity like bowling or some rolling activity where they need to knock down pins or objects, if you can take string and tie it to the bowling pin or whatever target you're using, and then tie the other end to like a basketball hoop or something along those lines, so the targets are slightly suspended off of the ground. This can provide the student to consistently roll or throw or whatever it is that they are doing in this target activity to hit the target, and also not worry about that transition time where you finish rolling or throwing and then pick the pins back up and then go back to the activity. Because during that transition time, a lot of learning will regress in some cases. But that's okay. By using string to suspend the targets from the ground, this is a great tool to use to keep that from happening. Archery, if you are working with a student who is visually impaired and they're struggling with the concept of force and how far they need to pull the bow back, if you can tie one end of a string to a target and then tie the other string to an anchor point wherever you are trying to fire the bow from, the student can use that as a guide wire to kind of get an idea of how far away the target is, and then that concept of force can be utilized in this type of setting. Also, if you are working with students with visual impairments, by using some string and tape and taping on the ground, so there are those elevated lines right there that can be utilized as a physical prompt for students to know where the boundaries are of the playing activity, or it can be used to mark off the equipment area. Again, these are things that can be utilized for a lot of different purposes for safety and activity play. String continued. By taking some string and connecting it to a couple of cones, if you're working on a skill like rolling, this can be a great visual and physical cue for students to use, so they roll underneath the string, and by touching the string after the roll, that can give them that physical prompt to know that they went under the string and released the ball properly. String continued. Let's see how these videos go. All right, so this is an example of a line ball. that can be utilized by just 2 anchor points, some string, and suspending the ball from the string.
Step and throw. Step and throw. Step and throw. Step and throw.
Whoops.
Step and throw. Step and throw. Step and throw.
Sorry about that, folks. I know I'm young, but I'm not the most tech savvy sometimes. So that's an example of using a line ball for throwing, and by utilizing a line ball in that fashion, it helps the student perform the skill with proper biomechanics, so they are releasing it from the proper angle. Now let's go ahead and move on to how we can use string for catching. So by taking a piece of string and bending it in half and putting the bite through the wiffle ball, and then connecting that wiffle ball to a belt or maybe another piece of string that's connected by a paper clip, the student is able to practice the skill of catching in the least restrictive environment by having their arms extend out where the ball is moving slower to help them practice the arm extension and catching. And then a line ball for kicking.
Step, kick. Step, kick.
All right, so those are some ways you can utilize string for whatever activities you are participating in physical education. Now we're going to move on to tape. So by utilizing something like blue painter's tape, which goes for about $3 or $4 depending on where you get it, this is a great skill to use when handling implements. So if you have a student on the autism spectrum or a student who's visually impaired, by using something like tape and taping over a hockey stick and to identify where to properly hold the stick, it gives students a visual cue of where to put their hands, and you can use a cue like hands on blue. It also provides different texture for students who are visually impaired, where they can scale on the stick and identify where they need to hold it. Blue painter's tape can also be used as targets and boundaries, whether you're visually impaired, have autism, or any type of disability. It can provide a texture, or it can provide a great visual if you're using a color contrast to create some type of target or identify a boundary of where the student isn't supposed to go. And this can also be used for locomotor skills, where if you are working with a student on, say, the gallop, and you're always supposed to keep that lead foot forward, by taking a piece of tape and putting on the foot that you are supposed to be leading with, this can serve as a great visual cue for students to use when practicing the skill. And this can also be applied for, say, throwing overhand or underhand, where you have to step with that opposite foot. By putting a piece of tape on the opposite foot, they're able to visually see which foot is supposed to come forward. Tights. I use tights for a variety of different things in my lessons, and I'm going to just pull up a quick video on how it can be utilized if you're doing a dribbling activity for students in physical education. So by putting the basketball or whatever you're using inside a pair of tights and connecting it to a couple anchor points, the student is able to dribble the ball without having to lose it. So this can be really beneficial in having multiple trials and having students really master the skill of using the finger pads to successfully dribble the ball with their hands over and over again, and not have to worry about the ball going off their foot or just getting away from them, which can happen a lot. Also, for volleying, if the thing I like about the tights is that they are expandable, and you can put them inside of a volleyball or beach ball and connect the other end to a part of the body, maybe the belt or something. That way you can keep practicing the serve or the volley or the set over and over again without having to worry about losing the ball, which provides an opportunity for multiple trials. Kicking, something I often use in kicking activities, is a pair of tights, but because by putting the ball inside the tights, you or the paraeducator or even the student can hold on to one end and the ball is in the other end of the tights, and they can practice kicking without having to lose the ball. And again, multiple trials, more likely for the student to successfully pick up on the skill. And it's also nice when you're practicing just dribbling with the feet, because by having it attached to the ball attached to you by using the tights, it can really help in just trying to dribble with the feet, because sometimes we have that student who likes to just blast it when you're trying to dribble around cones or something like that. And for catching, if you take a pair of tights and put it over a balloon, it can act as a lightweight ball, and this can be really beneficial for a student who's working on the catch. And then rackets, we're going to go over that in just a little bit. Balloons. Balloons are always great to have in your little AP bag when if you're going from site to site. Balloons are great to use for volleying, striking, if you're doing like badminton or tennis or something like that. Instead of using a ball, you can just use a balloon and tie a string to it and attach it to the net, so that way it always stays in bounds. Also can be used for different striking activities. And again, the throwing and catching, I talked about putting the tights over the balloon, and that is a great way to use a lightweight ball that is more safe for students. And for jumping, this is very interesting. So sometimes, let me just stop the screen share real quick. So it's not uncommon to have students practice the jump, and instead of landing on 2 feet simultaneously, like so, sometimes they'll jump, 1 foot will be forward. But if you take a balloon, place it in between the knees, the student is forced to have to take off on 2 feet and land on 2 feet at the same time. Socks. You always want to have a couple of fresh pairs of socks in your APE bag when you're getting ready for whatever lesson activities you're doing, because these really do come in handy. I don't know about anyone who is watching this presentation right now, but there are times where you'll have a student that is trying to throw with a partner, but instead of throwing with the partner, they're throwing at the partner, or they're throwing at the staff, or just any different types of scenarios like that. But by using a rolled up pair of socks, this is a great way to use a lightweight object that won't create any potential harm. And also for those of you who are still in distance learning and teaching via online, this is a great tool because most people have socks at their house. So it can be used for different throwing and tossing. Comes in hand for practicing the catch too, because it's just softer and it's just easier to grip as opposed to something like a tennis ball. Then for if you are in person and if you're doing activities with tennis balls, you having a couple pairs of socks is very useful, because by putting the tennis ball inside of the sock, you can work on rolling, throwing, anything you're doing with the tennis ball, and it'll stay in close proximity. And for students who don't have very good grip strength, see how there are some loose ends over there on the sock? The student can just pinch it and practice the throw or the roll and not have to worry about gripping the entire ball. Next item, toilet paper rolls. These are great items to use, especially if you are still in distance learning and want to work on bowling or just some type of underhand tossing activity. These make great targets. Also, by taking some tape and a couple toilet paper rolls, you can connect them and then take something like a glove or maybe a sock, like we talked about before. And this can be an extension of your arm and be used for tag activities if you are doing school, if you're not in distance learning as of right now. And for social distancing purposes, having an extension like this, if you're trying tag games, could also promote safety among students. And for striking, maybe we have some students that have a hard time swinging a bat, but by connecting a couple toilet paper rolls together, this can make a perfect bat if you're doing distance learning or in-person learning for different striking activities with students. Toilet paper rolls continued. I talked about how you can use some toilet paper rolls as a bat. It also makes a great tee. Paper clips. So as you could see in the different line balls I was using for guide wires or throwing and kicking, instead of using a bunch of carabiners, which do come in handy, but they also add a lot of weight to whatever bag that you're carrying your items around in. But using something like a paper clip, they totally work. They can hold a pretty decent amount of weight, and they're very, very light. Wire coat hangers. So these come in handy when you're practicing different striking or punting activities, and they also make great targets, because you can take the coat hanger. If I'm practicing throwing at a target with a student, I can take my coat hanger, I can bend it and say, okay, throw through the coat hanger. And then this can motivate and prompt the student to access a visual cue. And then for serving, let's go ahead and talk a little volleyball here. So there are times where students have a hard time performing the serve by holding the ball in one hand and doing the strike. But by using the coat hanger, this can be very, very beneficial. If you're working with students who struggle with this, you as the teacher can hold on to it, or the paraeducator can hold on to it. The student can just work it on the arm motion of performing the underhand serve. Also, by using the tights we talked about before, you can utilize the wire coat hanger to make a racket. This is very lightweight and expensive. Works great. Rubber bands. Rubber bands are a great tool to have in your AP bag because you might be at the high school level and working on something like strength training, and there are those resistance bands in the gym, but sometimes they're just a little too intense, too hard to use, which is no big deal because if you take a couple of rubber bands, interlace them, this works as a great tool to practice resistance band training leading up to it. And we're going to do a video on how rubber bands can be utilized to enhance core strength.
Go ahead, Mr. Ahmad.
So by taking the rubber band chain, putting it on the ends of the feet, the student can lie down, and every time they go up to use the sock ball or whatever you're using. As you can see right here, the student is doing a crunch right now. Now, students might not always be the most motivated to sit down and do crunches over and over again, but most students really like shooting things at targets. So this is a great way to keep the student engaged and enhance that core strength. Also, by taking a rubber band chain as like so and attaching it to two anchor points where the rubber band is tight, you can hold on. You can take something like a tennis ball or your sock ball, and this can be utilized in throwing and catching activities if the student can't throw very far to help keep them included. Plastic bags. I have a whole mess of these in my AP bag. They come in handy because by using something like a plastic bag, it's very easy to grip. And if you are doing a weight training activity in the fitness center, the student might have a hard time gripping the bar or dumbbells, but if you can take some weights, as you can see in the picture here, place it inside the plastic bag, it makes it easy to grip, and the student can participate in different fitness activities with their peers. Also, for volleying, if you can use maybe you don't have balloons and because they got all used up from your previous class. No big deal. Because when you take a plastic bag, hold it open, let it get some air, then tie the ends together. This can act as a balloon for whatever striking with the body parts activities you may be doing. Also, when using plastic bags, you might be in the gym doing activity, and maybe this PE class is right after lunch, and a kid is going a little too intense and gets sick on the floor. And you might not have gloves on you right away, but if you keep a couple of plastic bags handy on you in your AP bag, boom, I got some gloves right here, and I don't have to worry about getting sick or anything gross touching me. Right, next slide. Plastic bags continued. So by if you're working on like soccer or rolling activities, by wrapping a plastic bag around the ball that you're using, it makes noise as it's going. So this serves as a great auditory cue for students who may be visually impaired. It doesn't roll as far if you're practicing in the gym, and it's easy to grip. Velcro. Velcro is a great tool to use while engaged in physical education, because maybe the student is struggling with using the dumbbells. But if you can get yourself a couple pieces of Velcro and attach the Velcro to the hands. Sorry, folks, I don't have nails. I should have thought about this before my presentation. By attaching the Velcro to you on each hand, you can put your hands together, pull them apart, and that's a great way to practice enhancing your strength. Also, if you're working on catching with tennis balls or using anything fuzzy, if you attach the Velcro to the hands, this can help the student with catching. You can also attach Velcro to something like a tennis racket or to a baseball bat or wiffle ball bat, and this can help students with gripping the object. Where can I get all these items? I got everything that I just presented from places like CVS, Walmart, Target, Dollar General, and Walgreens. And you can get this entire inventory for under $30. So this is my email if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. I appreciate those who participated in this presentation today. I hope you were able to take something away from it. And if there's anything I can do to assist you with any other types of activities, please feel free to reach out to me anytime, and we'll touch base. You'll make a new friend, and your student will be able to be more successful in physical education. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your conference.